The Nine-Tails is one of the strongest beings in the Naruto universe, definitely the strongest tail beast except for the Ten-Tails, and a force of nature in of itself. Throughout the ages, several shinobi have tried to tame the Nine-Tails, either by controlling it or by becoming Jinchurikis, imprisoning the tail beast inside of somebody's body so that that person could access the chakra of the creature. So today we're gonna be ranking every single master of the Nine-Tails, either the Jinchurikis or the people who controlled it, to determine who was the best at using the massive power of the tail beast to bolster their strength and become more powerful during fights. Starting off with number 7, and this one may actually be very surprising. It's gonna be Hashirama Senju. Now Hashirama has absolute control over the Nine-Tails after he takes it from Madara. You can take a look at how Hashirama just grabbed the Nine-Tails with his Buddha statue, and the Nine-Tails looks like a small pet being grabbed by the statue's hand. It's absolutely insane. Hashirama has no problem whatsoever taming the Nine-Tails. As a matter of fact, his wood style and Senju chakra seem to be a perfect counter for the Nine-Tails, allowing Hashirama to suppress the tail beast without much of an issue. But the thing is that for this particular list, well, Hashirama doesn't really do anything with the Nine-Tails while he has it under his command. At least as far as we know, and lore-wise, this is very much supported. Hashirama never used Kurama to fight any wars or fight any opponents. First, because he probably doesn't even have any means to do so. He can suppress the Nine-Tails' chakra, but he cannot use the tail beast like Madara could, controlling with the Genjutsu, for example. So the reason why Hashirama kept the Nine-Tails was obviously to maintain the security of the world and Land of Fire, because the Nine-Tails is an extremely dangerous being, especially when it's angry, when Madara controls it for years, making it do its bidding, and then the Nine-Tails want to lash out against anybody that it sees. Also, Hashirama was kinda dumb when he just delivered every single tail beast he had access to for free to the other villages, trying to acquire peace by doing that. It really backfired Hashirama. That wasn't the greatest idea, but at least he kept the Nine-Tails in the Leaf Village, which in hindsight was a good idea, at least. I mean, the Nine-Tails is far more powerful than every single other tail beast. It's even more powerful than all the others combined, so having the Nine-Tails was at least better than nothing at all. Hashirama, the god of shinobi, the guy who could pick the Nine-Tails very easily with his Buddha statue, acknowledged that the Nine-Tails' power was very dangerous and he had to keep it under control. And that's why he decided to seal it in his wife, Mito Uzumaki. And that's the strange thing, the Leaf Village seems to be the only major village that doesn't try to use its tail beast as a weapon during wars. Hashirama certainly doesn't try to use it. We don't get any information about Mito Uzumaki using the Nine-Tails ever, and then we also get the confirmation in the Minato spin-off manga that Kushina is not being used in the Third Great Ninja War, and Minato's actually trying to win the war quick so that they don't have to resort to that. So it's very strange that everybody else is using their tail beast to the best of their abilities during wars. We see in the Minato spin-off manga that the Stone Village, well, they are sending the 4 and the 5 tails to the battlefield, and they were aiming Bijuudamas at Minato and Jiraiya. The reason may actually be because the first Jinchuriki was the first Hokage's wife, and Hashirama may not want his wife to go to war and be used as a tool. So it's very possible that he just introduced a policy to keep the Nine-Tails safe inside the Leaf Village, not use it as a weapon so that it doesn't fall in the enemy's hands, which would be very detrimental, and would also protect his wife and the future Jinchuriki. Hashirama was a very compassionate guy. I am pretty sure he wouldn't want people to be used as tools, especially after seeing the horrors of war during the Warring States period, which is gonna lead me to number 6 on this list. Mito Uzumaki, the wife of Hashirama. She was the first Jinchuriki of the Nine-Tails, at least that we have confirmation of. Maybe before the Age of Shinobi there was another Jinchuriki of the Nine-Tails, and then the Nine-Tails may have escaped this Jinchuriki, but we just don't know about that. We don't even know how long before the Age of Shinobi the Nine-Tails was built by Hagoromo, so this is pure speculation. It's very safe to assume that Mito was most likely the first Jinchuriki to host the Nine-Tails, especially because it is said that before the Age of Shinobi, the tail beasts were free to roam the world. It's with the start of the Age of Shinobi and the village system that the tail beasts are used as weapons. And it's very interesting thematically as well, because the Shinobi system causes so many problems for the characters and the world. It causes so much disgrace, and the same thing applies to the tail beasts themselves. They were free prior to the Shinobi system, but now they are prisoners, forced to lend their power so that the humans can kill each other in their wars. Still, we just don't have confirmation that Mito Uzumaki uses the Nine-Tails in any capacity. Now, there probably are some incidents where the Nine-Tails' chakra would leak out of her body, because that seems to be the case whenever a Jinchuriki of the Nine-Tails has a very emotionally charged moment. But because we don't have any confirmation of it that she's ever used the Nine-Tails' chakra in any capacity, I am putting her second to last on this list. And I'm actually putting her in front of Hashirama because it's easier for you to control and use the chakra of a tailed beast when you are the Jinchuriki, and this is very much explained throughout the entire series. So if Mito wanted to access the Nine-Tails' chakra, it would be easier for her than for Hashirama when he just had control over the tailed beast, but the only thing he could do was to suppress the chakra of the creature and not really use it as a weapon. And being a Jinchuriki, albeit an imperfect one, still allows you to access the chakra of the beast. We see that when Madara and Obito are controlling the Ten-Tails, for example, during the war arc, they are just using it as a tool. They are not the Jinchuriki at first. Of course, they're linking their Hashirama cells into the Ten-Tails to get a better grasp of the creature, but when it starts to evolve further and further, Madara says, well, we're gonna have to become Jinchuriki of this thing eventually because we're not gonna be able to control it anymore. So it's obvious that being a Jinchuriki grants you better access to the beast's power, unless you can just control it perfectly, which a couple of people can do to the Nine-Tails, but the Ten-Tails was just something different. But because she is a Jinchuriki, she gets number 6 in front of Hashirama because she can at least use it as a weapon and not just suppress the chakra. Moving on to number 5, we have Kushina Uzumaki, the second Jinchuriki of the Nine-Tails and the one who inherited it from Mito Uzumaki. Now, as I said before, Kushina was not used as an extensive weapon of war using the power of the Nine-Tails. As a matter of fact, it's very clear that Kushina tried to avoid the Nine-Tails as much as she could. But with the Minato spin-off, we actually get some very interesting new pieces of information about Kushina's relationship with the Nine-Tails here. We see that the Nine-Tails kind of torments her every day. She wakes up having a nightmare because the Nine-Tails is taunting Kushina. And it seems like the Nine-Tails is constantly trying to take over Kushina's body. We don't know if this was the case with Mito because we just don't have that much information, but it certainly wasn't the case with Naruto because the Nine-Tails only starts to tempt Naruto when he hits rock bottom, man. For instance, at the Tenchi Bridge arc, when Naruto goes crazy against Orochimaru because Orochimaru is taunting Naruto about Sasuke, and then in the Pain arc, when Naruto's lost everything essentially and he's just given in to the power of the Nine-Tails. Those were the two main moments the Nine-Tails was taunting Naruto, trying to take over his body. But for Kushina, I mean, she just wakes up in a normal day and the Nine-Tails is trying to get her body. That's pretty awful. Because if you think about it, the first time that Naruto got the Nine-Tails' imp against Haku, for instance, he never heard the Nine-Tails saying anything. He just got very angry and then the Nine-Tails' chakra leaked out. But it wasn't as though the Nine-Tails was communicating with him, and you would figure this would be the case if Kushina was being tormented by the Nine-Tails in her sleep, even though she wasn't really going through anything too traumatic. Now, we don't get an explanation as to why the Nine-Tails was so much more mean to Kushina, but the reason is probably because the sealing jutsu that was used on Kushina was much weaker than the one used on Naruto. And because of that, the Nine-Tails could do much more with Kushina. She could tempt Kushina into just giving up, into letting the Nine-Tails consume her body daily. And for Naruto, because the sealing jutsu was much stronger, well, first, the Nine-Tails' chakra wouldn't leak out so easily, but also the Nine-Tails wouldn't be able to provoke Naruto as often unless Naruto willingly enters his inner dimension when he can see the Nine-Tails within himself. Obviously, Kushina could do the same thing, and we see that in the Minato manga, but it looks as though Naruto could access his inner dimension, quote-unquote, much easier and on his own volition, while Kushina's just at the mercy of the Nine-Tails, and the sealing jutsu is just like barely holding on. But I put Kushina on number 5 here because she actually uses the Nine-Tails' chakra in the Minato manga. The chakra begins to leak out when she realizes Minato's doing everything to protect her, and her love for Minato is what actually prompts the seal to weaken, and then the chakra leaks. Now, first Kushina slaps Minato with Nine-Tails' tail in the normal version 1 cloak, but then she goes version 2 and the chakra takes a hold of her body, and then she just pierces Minato with her hand, and that's very gruesome. Luckily, Kushina and Minato are able to contain the Nine-Tails using their powers in combination. I mean, Kushina uses her chains and Minato uses his Rasengan, and this is all happening inside of Kushina's consciousness, sense, just like in Naruto's, but now Minato's helping her out here. But she's gonna go a little bit higher than Mito because, well, at least she tapped into the Nine-Tails' chakra, even though she had no control over it. She was able to eventually subdue the Tail Beast, and theoretically, if she wanted to in an emergency, if the village was being attacked, or if people were trying to kill somebody that she loves, she could just go ballistic willingly, let the Nine-Tails wreak some havoc as a last resort, just like Naruto did a couple of times. So at least she has that going for her, and technically you could say Hashirama, for instance, could do the same thing. It's just like, well, let the Nine-Tails go free, and then it can destroy some people for you. But no, because when the Tail Beast is trying to take a hold of your body, but it hasn't yet completed a final transformation, aka when you have a chakra cloak or a version 2 cloak, neither the Jinchuriki nor the Tail Beast have full control over the actions of what you're doing. And we see that very clearly when Naruto fights Orochimaru, for example. He's just unleashing his hatred. The Nine-Tails' chakra has taken over his body, and it's a hateful thing. It's just going to strike whatever moves. That's why it strikes Sakura as well. The Nine-Tails is extremely intelligent. It wouldn't just lash out if it had control, because in that form, it's just a raw hatred of the Nine-Tails' chakra. And that's why it's a little bit better than just using the Nine-Tails without controlling it somehow, because then the Nine-Tails can actually just turn around and try to destroy you, because, you know, Kurama's sentient and she can think for herself. So that's why Kushina goes here in number 5. At least she can use the power somehow. And she also has a semi-reliable way to control the chakra when she is done. So yeah, she goes here. Perhaps she needed more training, but she never got that. I don't think it's something she really wanted to pursue, but still. Number 4 is gonna be Kinkaku and Ginkaku. Now, these guys have never controlled the Nine-Tails, and they were never Jinchuriki of the Nine-Tails. Well, they were never real Jinchuriki, but they were pseudo-Jinchuriki. Long ago, Ginkaku and Kinkaku, with the help of the Cloud Village, tried to tame the Nine-Tails. Even before Madara started to tame it with his Sharingan, Ginkaku and Kinkaku tried several things to control the Tail Beast to harness its power, but they weren't really able to do much. And eventually, the Nine-Tails just swallowed the two of them. Now, obviously, everybody thought they were just dead. I mean, how can they survive being swallowed by the Nine-Tails? But they were pretty tough. They ate the Nine-Tails' stomach flesh to maintain themselves alive for a long period of time, and the Nine-Tails eventually had to regurgitate them because it just couldn't handle them anymore. And because they ate so much of the Nine-Tails' meat, they got Nine-Tails chakra. They became pseudo-Jinchuriki. They didn't hold the entire Tail Beast in their bodies just like Naruto, Mito, and Kushina did, but they had latent chakra of the Nine-Tails that they could access kinda like a Jinchuriki, which is pretty insane. And it wasn't just something they would use once and run out of it, which you may think would be the case, right? Well, you eat the Nine-Tails' meat, you gain some additional chakra, but then when you use that particular chakra, it's just going away because it came with the meat you ate. But apparently, somehow their bodies were able to contain that chakra and even regenerate that, meaning that they could use a pseudo-Jinchuriki version 2 mantle several different times. The Raikage even speculates when he's explaining about the Kinkaku and Kinkaku brothers that they may be descendants of the Sage of Six Paths because other people simply weren't able to do such a thing. The Cloud Village tried to feed pieces of the Eight-Tails' meat to their ninjas, but nobody survived. Ginkaku and Kinkaku were the only ones who could do something like that, and they ate the Nine-Tails' meat, which is even more powerful than the Eight-Tails. And the fact that the chakra is not a consumable item, quote-unquote, it doesn't just go away after you consume it, is pretty crazy to me. Like, they just regenerate the Nine-Tails' chakra. Somehow, that piece of the Nine-Tails got imbued into them forever. Even their Edo Tensei form had access to the Nine-Tails' chakra, which is very insane. And sure, we don't see an Edo Tensei Jinchuriki that had a Tail Beast and no longer does in the Edo Tensei form to see if they'll have the latent powers of the Tail Beast. And I guess you could say that there's that filler with the former Eight-Tails Jinchuriki and he had access to the Eight-Tails' chakra, but that's just filler, nobody cares. Still, there are a couple of examples of former Jinchuriki that still got a couple of abilities from the Tail Beast they used to have, and these are going to be very rare because usually when the Tail Beast gets extracted from the Jinchuriki simply dies, but there are exceptions for it. The first one is Gaara. She Kushina revives Gaara after the Akatsuki extracts the One Tail from him, and he still retains powers from the One Tail. For instance, when he attacks his dad in the 4th Great Ninja War, from a very long range, they're not even seeing who's attacking them. Rasa, the 4th Kazekage, believes it's Shukaku attacking them because the sand looks so much like Shukaku's attack, but it's just Gaara without Shukaku. Meaning that Gaara could retain a bit of Shukaku's power even after the extraction of the Tail Beast. Now, of course, we find out later that Shukaku was not what was protecting Gaara all along. Gaara still had his quote-unquote auto sand protection that was just going to protect him for whatever without Gaara even thinking, but that was his mother's will. She's always wanted to protect Gaara all along, and her spirit was keeping Gaara safe even after her death. We also see that Obito retains a bit of the Ten-Tails' chakra, the 6th Path's chakra, and a couple of its abilities after the Ten-Tails gets extracted. For instance, he's able to summon his staff of good Odamas when he's facing Jubidara. He even blocks a couple of good Odamas from Jubidara with his good Odama staff, and he's able to extract a fraction of Shukaku's and Gyuki's chakra from Madara when he caught Madara lacking and shoved his hand in Madara's chest, so he still had access to a couple of its powers. And then, when Obito dies, he's able to transmit his dual Mangekyo Sharingan to Kakashi, and Kakashi awakens a perfect Susano, which should be impossible with a normal Mangekyo Sharingan, but because Obito had latent 6th Path's chakra from being a Jinchuriki of the Ten-Tails, even though he wasn't anymore, Kakashi was able to awaken a perfect Susano. So yeah, it makes some sense that Ginkaku and Kinkaku are able to use the Nine-Tails' chakra in their Edo Tensei form, and the chakra keeps on regenerating regardless of them not being true Jinchuriki. And even though they are not true Jinchuriki, they can still use the power of the Nine-Tails pretty well. As I said, they had a version 2 cloak, and they retained their consciousness throughout the process very well, just like B did whenever he went version 2. Kinkaku could still speak in that state, which is not something you would be able to usually do unless if you were a perfect Jinchuriki like B is. Now, of course, he's not as powerful as version 2 Naruto, for example, with a true Nine-Tails inside of him, but still, they are pretty powerful, and especially them combining their powers, they should be even stronger. It's just that the Alliance only fought against that version 2 Kinkaku, and Ginkaku was already sealed, so they just had to deal with one of them. So Inoshikacho was able to seal Kinkaku without that much trouble, but Shikamaru's pretty smart, and they had a very OP 6th Path stool to help them out in the Ember Jar. So even though their power-up wasn't the strongest by any means because they were pseudo Jinchuriki, they still had full control over their transformation, and they could use the Nine-Tails' chakra very well in combat, so much so that they stomped Tobirama and killed him very easily. Moving on to number 3, Obito Uchiha. Now, Obito doesn't control the Nine-Tails for that long. He just invades the Leaf Village, gets Kushina after she just gave birth to Naruto, and uses the weakened state of her seal to extract the Nine-Tails from her, and then he puts the Nine-Tails under a Genjutsu, controlling it. He then summons the Nine-Tails in the middle of the Leaf Village and goes to fight Minato. So like he's controlling the Nine-Tails, making it fight the entire village while he is fighting the 4th Hokage, the strongest ninja of his time. That's pretty impressive, let's be real. We don't know exactly how much control he exerts over the Nine-Tails when he's actually fighting against Minato in that situation. Maybe he's just like putting the Nine-Tails in autopilot and saying, yeah, just fight the village for me, I'll deal with Minato and then we go back to it later. But we see that when Minato shows up, after he summons the Nine-Tails, he notices Minato standing on top of his Hokage head, and then he just literally aims a Bijuudama at Minato, trying to kill him. But that Bijuudama was just a distraction because Obito sneaks behind Minato, and then he almost catches him in his Kamui. Now, eventually Minato takes the Nine-Tails out of Obito's control, tagging him with a release seal, but while he was doing it, Obito was pretty proficient in controlling the Nine-Tails with his Sharingan. Now, of course, the Nine-Tails is just fending off against not that strong ninja, the strongest guy fighting against the Nine-Tails before Minato shows up, and when the Nine-Tails was under Obito's control was Hiruzen, who's very powerful, but he was able to drive the Nine-Tails out of the Leaf Village with the help of a lot of ninjas, and even still, several shinobi died during that day, so much so that the entire village was scared for over a decade after the attack. They were very mean towards Naruto just because the Nine-Tails was sealed inside of him, and they were afraid he would lash out and destroy the village again, just because there was such a traumatic day, and that was Obito's doing. Now, we don't see Obito fighting in conjunction with the Nine-Tails. The Nine-Tails is fighting separately from him during the attack, so we don't know exactly how proficient he is at controlling the Nine-Tails. Maybe he's not so precise, maybe he doesn't have that much experience controlling a tail beast, but we see that he could at least aim a Bijuudama wherever he wants to. And the benefit of this particular situation is that Obito literally gets to control 100% of Kurama's chakra here. The others on this list so far, they couldn't do that. Hashirama had the entire Nine-Tails for him, but he couldn't even use it, and the other Jinchuriki, as well as Ginkaku and Kinkaku, they just had access to a fraction of the chakra. If Mito and Kushina used the entire Nine-Tails' chakra, they would just be consumed by the tail beast and die. But Obito, he just genjutsus the Nine-Tails and uses it on his own volition. The entire thing, which is really powerful. Moving on to number 2, Madara Uchiha. One of the legendary exploits Madara is known for in the entire shinobi world is that he was able to tame the Nine-Tails with his Sharingan and use it against the first Hokage. This is one of the lore aspects of the Naruto series that's thrown around a lot. A lot of people mention this. Oh, Madara was able to tame the Nine-Tails, the Sharingan. It tames the Nine-Tails when you master it completely, and you can get so much power from it. And it's one of those legendary things that people are just very hyped about in universe. Like, okay, this Madara guy, he was insane. He could just control the Nine-Tails, the most powerful beast in the planet. But then you may be saying, well, Obito just did the exact same thing in number 3. Why is Madara number 2? Like, why isn't Obito here? Because, well, Madara does a bit more stuff with the Nine-Tails than Obito did. Of course, we only saw one particular occasion of Madara using the Nine-Tails, but it is implied that he had the Nine-Tails under his control for much longer than just one fight. I mean, every time Madara and the Nine-Tails were on screen at the same time, the Nine-Tails was cursing at Madara. Kurama even lended her power to Naruto when Madara used his wood style so that Naruto could counter Madara just because she hated Madara so much. And that was before Naruto befriended Kurama. Because yeah, Madara completely mastered his use of the Nine-Tails. He was absolutely insane with it. We saw Madara actually fighting in conjunction with the Nine-Tails. Now, of course, he was controlling it completely like a puppet, but he was effective at it. He was able to combat Hashirama's wood golem, shooting Bijuudamas. He was also tanking attacks with his Susano whenever Hashirama redirected his Bijuudama against the Nine-Tails. But the most impressive and clever thing Madara's done with the Nine-Tails was to coat it with his perfect Susano, creating the Majestic Attire Susano. Like, how cool is that? When I first saw Madara using his Susano as a literal suit of armor for the Nine-Tails, I almost lost it. It was one of the coolest things in the Naruto series. And it just makes sense, right? The Susano is technically a massive hollow suit of armor, so just use it around the Nine-Tails. And then you get the Nine-Tails plus a perfect Susano. Like, how can you get better than this? And you can control the Nine-Tails and his Susano at the same time, so there's no problem whatsoever. Not only that, but he could still use the Nine-Tails' arms to brandish his Susano sword, slashing through Hashirama's wood, carving off mountaintops in the distance, several of them, by the way. And this just made the Nine-Tails a nightmare to deal with. She was just so much more durable because of the Susano armor. I mean, the Susano is one of the most durable defensive jutsus in the series, if not the most defensive jutsu. And it also bolstered the Nine-Tails' attack potency, because just the perfect Susano alone was already casually destroying mountains. Whenever Madara pulled it against the 5 Kage, he casually brandished his sword, and just a shockwave, the compressed air caused by him just unsheathing the sword, slashed through mountaintops. So combining that with the power of the Nine-Tails is absolutely insane. Hashirama had to gather half of the entire nature energy on the planet and use his 1,000-armed Buddha statue, which is literally about the size of the Leaf Village, to fight against the Nine-Tails, and they pretty much tied. When Hashirama attacks him with a 1,000-armed Buddha statue, Madara compels the Majestic Attire Susano Nine-Tails to spam Bijuudamas, and I mean spam hundreds of them to combat the arms coming down upon it. And those weren't just simple Bijuudama, no, they were all laced with the Susano sword. Madara had done that to completely bypass Hashirama's ability to grab a Bijuudama with his wood golem and redirect it, so that with the sword, the Bijuudama kind of behaves like a massive shuriken and you just simply cannot grab it. When Madara aimed one at Hashirama. He had to use a 5-layered Rashomon to just change its trajectory. He didn't even stop it. A single Susano sword-laced Bijuudama cut through 5 Rashomon like butter, and Madara was spamming hundreds of them at Hashirama's Buddha arm statue. Now at the end of that clash, they kinda tied. Hashirama was able to break the Susano armor, while Madara was able to almost completely destroy Hashirama's Buddha statue, but Hashirama edged Madara out ever so slightly, but Madara wasn't defeated and they kept on fighting. And Hashirama, as I mentioned before, was able to literally pick the Nine-Tails off the ground and put it out of Madara's control by using a reverse sealing jutsu. But if it was anyone except for Hashirama in that situation, a guy that has literally the best counter for the Nine-Tails' chakra on the planet, Madara would have destroyed them. Moving on to number 1, Hikaku Uchiha. Now, a lot of people don't know this, but Hikaku actually commanded the Nine-Tails before Madara. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding! Number 1 is Naruto Uzumaki. I don't think this is very surprising to anyone. Would have figured that the main character, who so happens to be the Jinchuriki of the Nine-Tails in the series, gets to be the best at controlling its power and using it in fights. Now, obviously, it took Naruto a long time to even master a bit of the Nine-Tails' chakra. He was able to tap into it in the Chunin exams with some degree of confidence that he wouldn't go absolutely ballistic by just going to the Nine-Tails and asking for some chakra. Jiraiya taught him that, but then they figured this wasn't exactly the best way to go about it because the Nine-Tails was weakening Naruto's seal very slowly by giving him more and more chakra, and the Nine-Tails' chakra itself was very harmful to Naruto, so he just stopped asking for the Nine-Tails' chakra in Naruto Shippuden. Of course, Naruto went ballistic a couple of times against Orochimaru and then against Pain, but he wasn't really controlling anything in that state. Madara would still completely outclass him in terms of using the Nine-Tails here. Even when he mastered KCM-1, he is still not nearly as powerful as Valley of the End Madara, but KCM-1's already a massive step towards mastering the Nine-Tails completely. Naruto became very fast. He was able to rival the Raikage in speed. He was also able to use the Nine-Tails' chakra to extend his limbs and attack people using his Rasengan and Rasen Shuriken in very cool and different ways. But obviously, Naruto becomes the best at using the Nine-Tails when he befriends the Nine-Tails. During the fight against Obito, when he unleashes 5 tail beasts against Kakashi and Guy, Naruto and Kurama finally form their bond of friendship, and Naruto for the first time uses the QB Chakra Avatar mode, which is a much more efficient mode than just turning into the tail beast completely like B usually does. Because just with the QB Chakra Avatar, Naruto can leap in and out of that massive state whenever it's favorable for him. He can use his normal jutsus in smaller sizes when he is in that state as well. He can create shadow clones from inside the Nine-Tails, something he wouldn't be able to do if he just transformed into the real form of the Nine-Tails. He also gained the ability to create Bijuudamas and shoot them very well. He could do them both as his smaller normal form just with the KCM2 mantle or in the Kurama Avatar mode. And he could also create gigantic Rasengans and Rasen Shurikens with his Kurama Avatar. Also, because Naruto and Kurama had a bond of friendship, they could actually help each other, because when Madara was controlling the Nine-Tails, he wasn't getting help from it, he was just using it as a tool. But when Naruto gets the Nine-Tails' friendship here, then it's almost always a 2 versus 1 or 2 versus whatever many opponents they're facing. For example, in the fight against Sasuke, the Nine-Tails sends Sage Chakra after Naruto left a Kurama Shadow Clone on the ground whenever they're about to clash the Indra's arrow against Naruto's Rasen Shurikens. The Nine-Tails was also able to come up with very clever strategies, such as just shoving Kakashi into the Kamui dimension so that Kakashi could strike Obito from within the pocket dimension whenever he phases through matter in the real world. Naruto's also able to transmit the Nine-Tails' chakra to anybody he touches, imbuing them with a lot of chakra, powering their jutsus up, and just giving them more chakra. I mean, he literally amped the entire Ninja Alliance, or at least the ones who were still left when they were fighting the Ten-Tails there, because a lot of people had died by that point, but still, it was a lot of people Naruto was just giving chakra to. And from an in-universe perspective, for a regular shinobi, a Nine-Tails cloak is extremely powerful. It was giving Naruto back in part 1 amazing amps, so imagine what it would do to the entire army here. This chakra transmitting property also enabled Minato to teleport the entire alliance out of the 6 Crimson Ray formation before everybody was destroyed by the Ten-Tails' Bijuudama that Obito was using. So Naruto is extremely versatile with the Nine-Tails, especially obviously in the War Arc, and they can do so much stuff together on top of being extremely powerful. Like this video if you enjoyed it to help me out with the YouTube algorithm, it really does help, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. already. Watch this other video if you're interested in more Naruto content, and thank you so much for watching.